It's episode 121 of the Author Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Hank Garner. Be sure to go to hankgarner.com and subscribe to the show and find all of the archives of the Author Stories Podcast. I've got some new sponsors this week I'd like to tell you about. The first one is Swan's Night Sun by John C. Wright. John C. Wright is one of the living grand masters of science fiction and won the 2016 Dragon Award for Best Science Fiction Novel at DragonCon. Some readers said this book was thoroughly entertaining, a YA novel for all ages who enjoy imaginative urban fantasy. It's Swan Night Sun by John C. Wright. Also, The Unexpected Enlightenment of Rachel Griffin by Jaji Lamplighter. This book's about a magical girl detective. It's YA at its absolute best. One reader said it's like Fringe meets Narnia at Hogwarts. Like Harry Potter, but better. So go check these out. There's links to these books in the show notes. Also, I'd like to thank Ellen Campbell for sponsoring the show. Ellen is an editor extraordinaire. If you are a writer and are looking for someone to help you make your writing the best it can be, go visit ellencampbell.thirdscribe.com. There you can find all of the clients that Ellen has worked with, and I guarantee you will find many books that you recognize that Ellen has had a hand in behind the scenes. So if you need help with your manuscript, contact Ellen Campbell at ellencampbell.thirdscribe.com. Also, I'd like to thank Tom Freer for sponsoring the show this week. He's got a couple of books I'd like to point you toward. The first one is called Tom. It's a lighthearted and gently satirical fantasy that tells the story of a cat that is turned into a human. It's a fascinating story. I picked it up myself. I hope you will. And also Changeling's Island by Dave Freer. This book was shortlisted for the Dragon Award for Best Fantasy. This book was shortlisted for the Dragon Award for Best Fantasy, along with Larry Correia and Jim Butcher, and for Best YA Book. Changeling's Island is a coming-of-age story full of magic, mystery, and creatures of all sorts. I hope you'll go pick up a copy of it. I did, of each one of these, and please let our sponsors know that you appreciate what they do and allow us to keep bringing you great content each week. So please pick up a copy of these fantastic books and let them know that you appreciate it. Be sure to tune in later this week for the second Author Stories podcast coming to you on Friday. And if you go to hankgarner.com, you can find all of the archives of the show. You can subscribe on iTunes, on Google Play, at Stitcher Radio, on YouTube. Anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you can find the Author Stories podcast. Now on to our great interview with Charlaine Harris. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm extremely excited to have Charlaine Harris on the show with me today. A lot of you will know her from her Sookie Stackhouse series, which then became a TV series that was based on those called True Blood, and many, many other things. I'm really excited to have Charlaine on the show today because she, like I, am a native of the Deep South, and I think we share some cultural touchstones that we're going to get into today. So welcome to the show, Charlaine.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope to touch on those cultural touchstones. I don't get to talk to other Mississippians that often.
There you go. There you go. I begin each show with a variation of the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a storyteller and or writer?
Oh, I was very young, and my parents were great readers, and so was my brother. It was a reading family, and I think that's the best example they could have set me, was to have their own books there. And I just thought, oh, this is so wonderful that people actually do this, that they actually get to write books. Even as a child, I thought, this is fantastic, because I realized then, which maybe some kids don't, that real people write the books. And I thought, oh, that would just be so amazing if I could do that.
You are not the first person to come on the show and have that same sort of sentiment, that aha moment when you realize that these are things that people create. These don't just come out of the ether or something like that. That's wonderful. Uh, were you a big storyteller as a kid?
Not so much, though I had a
Yeah.
big fantasy life. Uh, for a while, I was into the Greek god pantheon, and I'm sure I just bored everyone around me to death with that. Uh, I would make my friends play Venus and Athena with me. Um, and that way, I would just get these big enthusiasms that no one else seemed to have. And I think it probably puzzled, my friends quite a bit.
Sure. What was your favorite novel what was the first novel that you read that really captured your imagination?
Jane Eyre.
Really?
Yeah. Hmm.
What was it about that story that resonated with you?
Gosh, it just had everything. It had an evil stepmother and step sibs. It had a terrible school with an adult in charge, and there was no one who could tell on him. There was her redemption of herself and her self-reliance, which was amazing and still is. The fact that she had a hidden talent also as an artist, and the fact that she stuck up for herself, which you don't see too often in stories that are basically romances. And she gave Mr. Rochester as good as he gave her. So they probably kept each other entertained the rest of their lives. And the mad woman in the attic. That is everything.
It had all the elements,
It had
didn't
all
it?
the elements.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. How old were you when you read that?
Oh my gosh, probably 10.
Oh, that's pretty heavy stuff for a 10-year-old.
Oh, well, I'm sure I didn't really comprehend
Right.
most of it, at least emotionally, when I was reading it, because I didn't believe people really had bad parents and evil things happen to them. Not anyone in the real world. I thought that was a book fiction.
That's really interesting because my daughter and I had a conversation yesterday when she has a project she's a college freshman and she's taking English Comp 1, and their assignment was to write a paper on a defining moment in their life. And she said that a bunch of her friends were writing things about a parent that died, or some tragedy here. There was just all this tragedy around her, and she said, I realized for the first time I've had a pretty good life. And I was like, well, I'm glad you just now realized that.
Yeah,
But, that's
it's good that she had that moment of clarity.
right, right. Oh man. Speaking of which, and we touched on this a minute ago, you were born in Tunica, I believe, and raised in Greenville.
No, no.
No.
I was born and raised in Tunica.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Tunica High School.
Okay, I'm sorry. So from the Mississippi Delta,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
the rich dirt of the Mississippi
And
Delta with
poor people.
you're right, and with that magical river next door, and such a rich tapestry of history and of characters. And what was it about growing up in the Delta, do you think, that has had the biggest impact on you as a person, or is there something about that being from that place that has had an effect on your storytelling?
Yes, of course.
And of course, I'm leading you with
No,
questions, of
no.
course.
It's interesting you should say that, because I realized pretty early that while there were some very bad things going on around me, and there were
Sure.
some people who were excluded, the toleration for eccentric people was enormous. I mean, you could just be
Yes.
very batty and still you were okay.
I'm sure you've seen the little memes or T-shirts, that say that some people hide the crazy people in their family, but in the South we put them on the front porch for everybody to
Put it
see.
right out on the porch. Yeah, I have. And really, it was very much like that. Uh,
Yeah.
if you grew up with people that did things that were that peculiar, you just accepted it as a matter of course.
Right, right. And in my extended family, we've got a couple of uncles that are kind of that way, and they're colorful characters, and I don't know if that's really a Southern thing or if that's
You know,
just the way
maybe not.
big families operate. I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe. I don't know because I've never, experienced anybody else's childhood, so I can't speak for that.
Right, right. Um, I'm a firm believer that place shapes our storytelling and shapes the threads of stories that we pick up. Um, the Mississippi Delta is a very specific place. It's a very there's not another place in the world like it. Uh, in your writing now, do you pull back on those memories and those experiences that you had from there?
Sure, I do. I also spent part of my childhood in Texas. My mother's parents lived there, and I would go home with her every year to help at the hotel they ran during rodeo, which is like a different season in Texas, rodeo. So we had to go help at the hotel. Well, I was just in the way, but my mother helped. So I had a huge contrast with the way I was brought up in the Delta and the very rugged, tough people that I found in Rock Springs, Texas. It was just a whole different culture. And it took me a while to see that as not a bad thing.
Right, and I can imagine being young and impressionable and helping, air quotes, helping to work at the hotel, seeing a revolving door of characters come and go. That had to make a big impression too.
Well, sure it did. The fact that the life there, that landscape was so barren. The trees were little and scrawny. The deer were little and scrawny.
I can just imagine.
And it was just a tough, tough life there compared to what I saw as a much easier life back home. Of course, it was only much easier for me. It wasn't much easier for a lot of people.
Sure, sure. When you were, what age did you leave the Delta?
Oh my goodness. Well, I went to college at Rhodes.
Okay.
So I was still in the Delta then, I guess, until, oh, even during my first marriage, I was in the Delta. Ooh, let me see. When I married my current husband of 38 years, we lived a year in St. Louis, which to me was the far north. Though people there amazingly did not think that it was in the north. But I knew better.
Right.
And then we lived in South Carolina, and then we lived in Arkansas, and now we're here. So I guess I essentially left the Delta when I was in my early 20s.
Okay. So you saw a lot of the cultural upheaval that and the time through the civil rights movement and how all of those things began to shape and to change the area. Is there any defining memory about that time that sticks out to you?
We were all very scared. Oh, I don't know if you can imagine what it was like then, but everyone felt they were living on top of a volcano, and no one had any certainty that we would come out of it and readjust and start our society over again. Essentially, I think a lot of us thought that this was the end. That maybe there would be rebellion, maybe there would be fighting, maybe there would be, the National Guard coming in as it did some places. It was just really scary.
So you went to Rhodes College there. What did you major in?
English and communication arts, because those were the only things I was good at, writing and talking. Ha!
Did you know then that you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, sure I did, but I also knew that I had to find a way to make my living. Unfortunately, I didn't take care of that until I got out of Rhodes and had a rather brief first marriage during which I was the chief breadwinner, which was, pretty pathetic because I could only make, I think the minimum wage then was $1.20 an hour, and that was what I made.
How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, at what point did you decide that you were going to try your hand as a professional author?
Well, I'll tell you, after I was divorced and when I met my second husband, he knew what I wanted to do, and this is really romantic. I'm warning you. He offered me the option of staying home and writing full time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a real gift.
Pretty darn good, huh? And he gave me an electric
Yeah.
typewriter for a wedding present.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love
It was
it.
cool,
Yeah.
and that didn't pay off for him for many, many years. I was just making very trivial money.
Right.
But he was glad later on.
Yeah. All you writers out there, don't let your spouses hear this part.
No.
The part where it takes a while to pay off.
It does, but whoever knew it would pay off like it did, not me.
Right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So you get the electric typewriter. You've got a spouse who believes in what you want to do, and who gives you the freedom to pursue that. What did you do? Did you sit down and did you have a character in mind? Did you have a story in mind? Kind of, how did you get the ball rolling?
Oh yeah, I had a story in mind. Like many writers, I tell myself stories to go to sleep, and that was one of the stories I told myself. And it really and it evolved into a book, which I wrote. And first, a friend of mine, Shannon Ravenel Purvis, who was teaching the creative writing class I was taking in St. Louis, showed it to a small press friend of hers who just said no. And I'd completely forgotten about this. She said no, she just really didn't think it was right for her. So Shannon sent it directly to Houghton Mifflin because she used to work there, and a lot of her colleagues were still there, and they took it.
Excellent. So what book was that?
Sweet and Deadly.
Sweet and Deadly. Who was the main protagonist in that?
A young woman named Catherine Linton.
Okay. Where did Catherine come from?
Well, she lived in a small Delta town. I didn't really know much at that time, and I realized I really had to write what I knew. I just didn't know enough. I wrote what I knew. Yeah.
That's interesting that I had a conversation with Joe Hart on last week's show, and we talked about that. He was from the woods of Minnesota, and his first stories began in the woods of Minnesota because that's where he was comfortable talking about, and those were the natural setting to him. As you grew as a writer, did you become more comfortable getting outside the confines of the narrow piece of land that you knew so well?
Sure, I had to because you can only set so many things in the Delta.
Right. Right.
Of course, I wanted to challenge myself. So I have set characters in a lot of different places. They all are in the South. I guess I could write a book set in Chicago, but I think there are enough people doing that. I think that I'm very comfortable staying in the South.
What is it that is unique about the South? Because let me ask it this way. When you're writing a book about the South, what differentiates that, other than the geography, from a book that's written and placed in Chicago?
I didn't catch the end of that.
I'm sorry. What is it about when you write a story based in the South, other than the geography? What is it that sets apart a story that's placed in the South as opposed to one that's in Chicago or somewhere up north?
I write rural mostly. or even suburban, but not urban,
Right.
because I like that. And there again, I think there are plenty of people doing cities, even southern cities. Uh, and I just felt like there was a lot to say about the rural and suburban areas of the South. And I felt like I could say something about them that was interesting and effective.
Gotcha. So, what did you follow up that first book with? Were you, when it got purchased and published, were you surprised at the success you were having with that?
Yes and no. That was the happiest experience of my life. I don't think anything could have made me happier. I really don't. And I'm so glad my parents lived to see it too. And but Also, I had to follow it up, and I didn't have the second book for a while. So I wrote it. It was called A Secret Rage, and it's still people still bring it to me to sign because it's deals with rape, and it's a pretty serious book. Uh, I think it was kind of unexpected coming from me, but I still get people who come up and tell me that it meant a lot to them, and I'm really proud of it.
Uh, was it the same protagonist?
Oh no, no, no!
Another
It was a
standalone book?
standalone. Yes.
What was it? Was there a particular catalyst for that story? Did that's a when you're dealing with such strong subject matter, a lot of times that comes from either a story that we've heard that resonates deeply with us, or maybe someone we knew. Was there a particular catalyst for that with
Well,
you?
I got raped, so it seemed like once I had healed from it, that if I shared, it would help other people. That I could offer up this experience and say, "This is horrible, but you can live through it." And come out good on the other side. It seemed to me like that was a pretty valuable thing to do, and maybe all I could do to um, to help other people.
Writing seems to be cathartic in ways that, well, maybe more so than other art forms. I guess we can convey very deeply and very specifically types of pain and suffering, and then hopefully uh, pass along some empathy with that as well. You say that people still bring that book to you because it obviously resonated
You,
very deeply with them.
what you're saying is, this is what it's really like if this happens to you. And if you didn't understand it before, please understand it now. Please have your eyes opened to what a terrible thing this is. That's what I'm trying for. And I thought the book came out really well. I was really proud of it. But unfortunately, after that, not unfortunately, I was expecting a baby, and I just quit writing while I was pregnant. And then I had another baby, another baby. And then suddenly it was 5 years. And I thought, well, this is this has gone on long enough. I can't wait any longer. In the meantime, of course, Houghton Mifflin had changed what they did. I wrote another book and they didn't take it, which was a big shock to me because I just thought, oh, well, this is a pretty sure thing.
Right.
But it wasn't at all. If you quit, I mean, if you have a hiatus, they don't figure you're reliable, and you know, they're not really excited about getting back into business with you. But eventually, I had acquired an agent by then, Joshua Bilmes, and he found a home for it at Walker, which was not very highly regarded at the time, not because the books it published were bad, but because it didn't pay well and it had three color covers. All their
Ooh.
covers were three colors, and it might not be good colors, but but that was it. Everyone said, "Oh my God, Walker, the covers!" You were immediately identified as being kind of in the basement of that.
What book was that?
That was the first Aurora Teagarden book, and I followed that up. I was with with them for 3 books, I think. Jed Hutchings was the editor there then, and she's still my friend. She's worked at Ellery Queen and been the editor there for many years now. But then she was an editor at Walker. And then when she left, I got an editor that we just did not get along at all. And I finished the second book in the series as quickly as I could, just so I could get rid of him. And may I say, he heartily returned that symbol.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
Yeah, those are painful to hear.
It just happens. He
right.
inherited me, and I would never have been his choice, and he would never have been mine, frankly. But I did get another position at, I was at Scribner's with Suzanne Kirk after that, because there's an Episcopal priest in the books, and she had just married an Episcopal priest, so I thought, yay, serendipity.
We often say that not all readers are going to like what we write. There's people have taste. They have particular likes, and certain things resonate with people and certain things don't. But I guess the same thing goes for who we work with in our publishing. Not every editor and writer is going to get along. Not every publisher and writer is going to get along, and that's just what comes with the territory sometimes, I guess.
That's why it's really good to have an agent as a buffer. I mean, you have to deal directly with your editor. And I usually enjoy that. I've had some great editors, and I've enjoyed working with them, and I've enjoyed the way they made my work better. But there have been some issues with the publisher as a corporate entity that weren't that much fun at all, and that's where having an agent is almost invaluable.
And I would imagine with the publishing landscape changing the way it has over the last few years, and a lot of authors hybrid publishing, some of them even self-publishing, direct to Kindle, and I would think that a lot of those options have really opened up where you could be a little choosy about who you work with.
Well, if you accept certain trade-offs, you can.
Sure.
But it is a trade-off for sure. At first, people would say, well, what about this self-publishing? And I would go, well, I don't know anything about it, frankly. But I wouldn't ever do that because I would go the conventional route. I can't really say that anymore. Some people are doing well self-publishing, and they have reasons they don't want to deal with an established publisher, or an established publisher doesn't want to deal with them. But I still prefer to have the corporation behind me. Don't ask me why. It just makes me feel better. I'm an old-fashioned girl, I guess.
Well, and that is absolutely, you're right. That's the beauty of having choice, is that you could choose to do that, or you can choose to do something else. That's the wonderful time that we live in. Tell me a little bit about the Aurora Teagarden book that you talked about. That began a long running series for you. What was where did the kernel of that idea come from?
Well, truthfully, it was partly a commercial decision, because I thought, ooh, who buys lots of books? Libraries buy lots of books. What if I wrote about a librarian? But I loved librarians anyway. My mom was a librarian, so it was a real natural fit. And I thought, well, I'll write about a short librarian who's trying to change her life. And of course, I started these many years ago, trying to change herself from a person who's clinging to her past to a person who's moving into her own future and coming into her own later than other people do. And, there are movies on Hallmark right now, I guess. Hallmark is filming each book as a 2-hour movie.
Are you happy with that that representation, the transferring these books to the screen?
Well, I've had extreme experiences in that arena. I mean, HBO is at one end of the spectrum, and Hallmark is at the exact opposite. Hallmark has their very precise demographic. Everything on Hallmark is clean, clean, clean. There's almost no overt violence. There's never sex, at least in my experience. Now, granted, I haven't watched all their programming, but they've certainly left the sexy bits out of my books. Anyway, but they're delightful people to deal with. They're just wonderful.
Sure.
And I think the scripts are competent. The actors and actresses do a great job. So all in all, I'm feeling really good about it. That kind of aroused my interest in writing another Aurora book. So I did for St. Martin's Minotaur, which was where I was when I quit writing the Aurora books. Got the same editor, Kelly Ragland, that I had then 13 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. A big circle there. And I wrote another Aurora Teagarden, and it was just a lot of fun to write something going back to my roots.
Was it easy to slip back into those characters and to fit back into that setting?
It was easier than I thought it was going to be. It was like putting on a pair of old shoes. No supernatural, not much graphic violence, not much graphic sex, but a nice hint of sex. And it was really fun. And the Aurora books are shorter than any of my other books. So that was fun too, making everything very compact and it takes place in a very brief period of time.
What is it that makes these books special? What does the librarian, what is her niche? What is she looking for?
She's looking to become her own person. She's looking to not knuckle under to her mother any longer. She's looking to picking her own boyfriends and them not being 100% suitable all the time. And she is ready for something big in her life, be it a relationship or a change of some kind. She's just on the brink of becoming who she really is. And I really identified with her in a lot of ways. I'm real fond of her.
You said there's no supernatural elements to it. I'm assuming she finds herself in some sort of trouble and things that she has to solve.
You know, it is just terrible how trouble follows. She finds herself in life-threatening situations every book. But, I decided I would just ignore that. I don't like self-referential books where they say, you better stay away or somebody's going to die. And somebody does, of course. I like it to be more of a surprise to her every time. I don't know. That makes her pretty gullible and weird, I guess. But it's the only way I can handle writing admittedly unrealistic books about someone who finds bodies and is not a police officer.
Oh, that's wonderful. How many of those books are there?
Well, I had written, I think, eight. I think I had written 8 when I quit writing those. And now I've written the 9th, and I'm working on number 10.
Wonderful. How difficult is it when you have a character like that to give them growth as a character, but keep what is endearing about them? Like she's constantly finding bodies and she's solving mysteries. How do you keep readers engaged with that while keeping her kind of grounded where she is?
She has a good reason every time to investigate the mysteries, and she doesn't really set out to investigate. She just picks up hints and clues along the way that are naturally occurring. She's not an active, nosy person. Sometimes I just think, why doesn't somebody shoot this person? Uh, People are just so, in some series, the protagonist just so nosy and is doing things that are totally not any of her business, and in fact are kind of outrageous to track down the criminal. Now, granted, it's pretty absurd for any amateur sleuth to find out who did anything anywhere.
Right.
There are just different approaches to it. But I just wanted to make her still a likable person whom things just happen to happen to.
Right. Tell me about Sookie Stackhouse. Where did this character come to you from?
Well, I had decided Aurora wasn't going to boost my career anymore. And it had become a time to make big changes if I was ever going to advance up that invisible ladder. I was tired of the hard-boiled people talking down to me. I was tired of, bringing in such a little bit of money. I was tired of calling bookstores and them not knowing who I was. And I just wanted to cut the reins and go running with something that I really loved. And I really loved the idea of a telepathic barmaid. That she gradually evolved in my head. Her situation evolved around her. Her world did. And after a lot of thinking, I had her world. And I took a long time naming her because I wanted it to be really evocative of where she was from.
Right.
And I thought I came up with a really good name for her. And then So I thought his name will be Bill. And it just all flowed from there.
Did you, where did you, or how did you decide to set this in the fictional Louisiana town?
Well, I lived in Arkansas at the time, but just right across the border. And my thinking was Anne Rice had done the southern part of Louisiana, and I would take the northern part that nobody wanted.
Right, right. Culturally, that area is not a lot different from the Mississippi Delta, but gets its own flavor of culture. There's a lot of things that are very specific to regions, even though they all kind of blend together. Did you take any special care to start looking into specific Louisiana lore and legend and things like that, or did you just kind of absorb what was around?
I kind of absorbed what was around. I was pretty busy creating my own world there and making sure it looked and felt like the world I saw. I wanted Sookie to be grounded in the everyday so that when the crazy supernatural stuff happened, she would still be a character you accepted and liked.
When you began writing that first Sookie book, did you feel like this was going to be different? I know you said that you were tired of kind of being pigeonholed or, wanting to break free. When you were writing it, did you get the feeling like, okay, I'm just going to, everything I've ever wanted to do, I'm going to pour into this book and it's going to be amazing?
That's exactly what I thought. I thought that was the book of my heart. I thought, I'm just going to let my sense of humor fly. And I did. I'd been suppressing it most of my life because a lot of it is, not accepted in a society. But I thought, there's so many things that are funny. If I couldn't laugh, I couldn't live. And I thought that there's humor in everything. And I really emphasized that in the books. Now, my agent was not a big fan because nobody was writing anything like that except Laurel Hamilton. and he did not know how anyone would put it on the bookshelves in a Barnes & Noble. But since he's my agent and I asked him to, he tried for 2 years to sell it, starting first with mystery editors who not only said no, but they said hell no. And then he took it to, in very insulting terms, I might add.
Right.
After a while, he said, "Do you really want me to keep forwarding the letters to you?" And I said, "No, I think I've gotten the gist of it." But then he offered it.
Boy, I bet they're kicking themselves now.
Yeah. Yeah, you can imagine how I felt when I won the Anthony at BoucherCon.
Oh, heck yeah.
It was a great moment. And I'm not above having a feeling of self-congratulations over that.
I think a little gloating is in order.
I did gloat. It's very unattractive, but I did.
You know what? Well.
I felt like, I was right. I was right for once. Often wrong.
Yeah.
It felt good to be right. But anyway, he found a place for it at Penguin and Ace, the Ace imprint. And it just took off like a rocket right out of the gate.
That had to be an awesome feeling after kind of letting it drift around for 2 years.
Great. It was great to have sales that actually showed up on our income tax. It's great.
Yeah.
Who could have foreseen all that would happen? Not me. I mean, I just thought, if I could make $75,000 a year, that would just be something. That would be all I ever wanted. Well, I just kind of bypassed that. And I enjoyed it very much, and I loved writing the books. Promoting them was a huge energy drain because, I would have 400, 600 people come to signings. Wow. It's good. It's great. And I stayed there till I had signed every damn book. But it was not easy emotionally, It's a big giveaway and no receiving back.
And a big culture shock, I would imagine, from being the writer who sits and writes in solitude and publishes to then be someone who's so sought after. That has to be a big shock.
It was a big shock, and I hope I adjusted gracefully. But it was sometimes I would go, I'm the same writer I was. I'm the same writer I am now. Why is this happening now? I still don't know. But it happened, and I learned to deal with it. I knew there would be a down, and I knew when I said I was going to quit writing the books that would be it. Because I don't think I could ever write anything as instantly attractive, apparently, to people as those books were. And sure enough, I haven't. But in a way, I'm happier now because my life is so much easier.
One thing I want to ask you is, you said that you set out to write this book because you were thinking commercially, but you were obviously not writing to market because there was no market like this. With the exception of Anne Rice, and her books are decidedly different, even though they're about Southern vampires. But it's a different animal altogether. And like you said, you really did bring out the dark humor, and I think that's something very overlooked in Southern cultures. We do have a pretty dark, humorous streak in a lot of Southern conversation and Southern literature. Because when you live in abject poverty, you learn to make fun of everything, yourself included.
And even when you lead a life with tremendous ups and downs, as I think I can safely say I have, you have to laugh about it. If you can't, it's just one long toil and trouble. I would rather laugh and try to put it in perspective than to mourn about it all the time.
Well, sure, and that's why we have Grapes of Wrath. When we need to to get down a mully grub about it, we read Grapes of Wrath.
I haven't mully grub and I don't know how long.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, but you set out to write commercially, but you were not writing to market. What do you think about the advice that people say? Well, if you want to be a professional writer, you need to be writing what sells. You need to research the market, find out what people are going to buy, and then go write specifically to that market. And I understand there's some wisdom in that from a business standpoint. But you obviously didn't do that. Did you have any idea that this was going to find the kind of audience that it did?
I hoped it would, but I had no certainty that it would. I thought it was going to either be an epic fail or an epic success. And I was really lucky that it went up instead of down, because it was really different from anything being published then, except for Laurel K. Hamilton. And Laurel's books, of course, are very different from mine. For all the Twihard fans who accuse me of ripping off the woman who wrote Twilight, my books were published way before Twilight ever came out. I thought, honey, just look in the jacket and see the date it was published.
Right.
That was exasperating. Anyway, it worked out great for me. I got a lot of opportunities I never thought I would. I got to meet people that I never thought I would sit next to, and there were so many things that just made it an incredible experience.
Did you? How did you follow up that first Sookie book with the next one? I'm assuming your publisher is like, okay, we need another one.
They came right back to me and wanted two more, and I thought,
bet.
oh, yes, this must mean I've made it. And of course, I had to come up with some ideas pretty quick. So I thought I wanted Sookie to be in a different location for the second book, and I wanted to start talking about vampire politics. So I wrote Living Dead in Dallas, and I thought it said a lot of things that I couldn't say if she had stayed back home. So I was really glad I wrote that. And then with the third book, I felt like I was really coming into my stride, and the world just kept blossoming. But then I would get bored, and I would have to develop a new supernatural character because I got tired of the same ones over and over. And I wanted to keep saying, this world is so rich and marvelous. Accept it, embrace it.
Your characters in that series are very three-dimensional, and you highlight a lot of things about Southern culture and things that we make fun of, and then a lot of you kind of poke fun at stereotypes. You've got the goofy rednecks that turn out to be more than they are, and you really take a lot of care with those characters, and that's one thing that I really appreciate about it is that even though you really kind of poke on some of those stereotypes, you really kind of try to peel the layers back on people and show that there's more to people than just what's on the surface. Is that a conscious thing that you do?
Well, it's the way I write. It's just the way I developed as a writer. And maybe that's why my characters have translated to the screen kind of consistently with the NBC series coming up in January for the Midnight books. Maybe because I try to write three-dimensional characters who have presence, who you can imagine living outside the pages of the book. I have to have some strengths as a writer. I have to believe that because, I would just perish if I couldn't believe I had some strengths. I try not to be, swell-headed, but I think that is one of my strengths is creating people that readers can really identify with and care about.
Were you Were you excited when the HBO deal came to turn Sookie into what then became True Blood? Kind of how did that unfold?
Well, I'd already had an option on the books, which was no big surprise because almost all writers will have an option at some point in their history. And this was not the first option I'd had. I had an option on the Aurora books for a while. Came to nothing. Most of them do. So I got one option on the Sookie novels, and he never was able to get the money or backing together to do what he wanted to do, and so his option was about to lapse, and I had 3 offers. He wanted to renew his option. Another group wanted it, and Alan Ball wanted it. So I talked to all 3 of them. My agent made me. And but when Alan Ball comes knocking at your door, you just have to say yes.
You invite him in and give him a glass of sweet tea.
Absolutely. He is so nice. He's a genius, and he is just a nice guy. Everyone who has worked for him has told me how much they enjoyed the experience, and you don't always get that.
That's wonderful. Were you excited to see Sookie translated to television instead of film? It seems like we're in a real golden age of television right now, where some of the most innovative and best storytelling is going on in kind of serialized seasons, as opposed to trying to take a novel and cramming it into an hour and 45 minutes, on the big screen.
I think at first I was disappointed, Hank, that it wasn't going to be a movie. But it turned out to be great for me that it was a television series. That was one of the first things Alan asked me. He said, do you see this as a movie, or do you see this as a television series? And without really knowing why I was saying it, I said, I see this as a television series on HBO. And he said, that's just how I see it.
That's great.
He likes HBO because it's close, not too far from his house. He doesn't like to drive.
That's great.
So he went to HBO, and they were willing to take a chance on it. So at first I was really excited, and I did not know what to expect because I knew they wouldn't stick to the books. But after they sent me the opening credits, which at the time were very different from what anybody was doing, I just thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to move. It was just, they were just so outrageous. I just thought, oh, this is so much more than I ever expected.
How do you feel that they've been faithful to Sookie?
They weren't faithful at all. Not after the first couple of seasons. Not at least to my story for her. I think the character was pretty consistent for most of the run of the TV show. And I think Anna did such a great job.
Yeah. Did you have any creative input to the TV series?
I didn't catch that, Hank.
I'm sorry. I said, did you have any creative input to the TV series?
No, I had a consulting position, and I was really glad to answer any questions they had for me. But amazingly, they wanted. Well, of course they had to. This was me being naive. They have to do the character as it's written in the script. They can't do the character as it was written in the books, because that isn't the same character.
HBO really probably is best suited for to translate these books, because you don't have to compromise on the level of violence or the sexy stuff that goes on. Were you happy to see it land there as opposed to like a Hallmark?
Oh, Hallmark never takes it. Yes, I really was, and what turned out to be a huge benefit to me was they gave me my own screen from the novels by Charlaine Harris every week. I had my own screen, and that just made my sales take off. They just skyrocketed after the show came on.
I can imagine. I had Craig Johnson, the writer of the Longmire Mysteries, on the show a few months ago, and he talked about having his books translated to. It was AMC, now Longmire's on Netflix, and how that just opened up an entirely new audience for his books. I could only imagine that happened the same way for you.
It did, though I've got to say some of this audience came from, I don't know, some of them were big fans of the TV show, and they brought very different expectations to the reading of the books. They had very different expectations. They had very different opinions as to what should happen. And they were really vociferous about that.
Oh, yeah. And of course we live in the internet age, so everybody can just tell you that anytime they want.
Very freely, very often very loudly. When I ended the books the way that contingent didn't want me to, I got death threats, I got curses, I got it was just horrible. I could not work for 2 or 3 months. I was just paralyzed at the hatred leveled at me. When after all, it's just a damn book.
Right.
I was so glad people enjoyed it. I was so glad people wanted to see the next one. But that level of investment was a little scary.
Yeah. How do you deal with criticism in that way? If criticism is a valid word for what we're talking about, that's something that's very real for artists of any stripe now. Is that you are open to constant input from people that you didn't necessarily ask for. Is there a way that you set a barrier there to protect you from that?
Yes, I have several things in place to protect me. I don't read reviews on Amazon. That is the kiss of death if you read those, because everyone has an opinion and they will give you 1 star if they thought your book cost too much. I'm just going, not responsible for that. That doesn't say anything about the content of the book. I thought I should listen to people whose opinion I know and respect, because that's the only way I can get a true perspective on how well or how poorly I'm doing as a writer. I can't listen to people who want to tell me how to write the books because they're my books.
Right. You mentioned a few minutes ago that you have a new series that's coming out on NBC. What is that series about?
Well, the Midnight Books, which I signed on for, is a trilogy, and they will probably stay as a trilogy, are set in Texas about a very strange small town where the inhabitants have a purpose, though they don't exactly know what it's going to be. They just know there is one. And I had to kind of make it up as I went along, actually, why they were there. I'm not big on planning a lot. So the third book was a real challenge. But I just wanted to write about these people and how they were able to sustain each other in the face of the world's indifference or ridicule. And then NBC came. David Janelari Productions was interested in it, and after a lot of hemming and hawing over a contract, they started work on it. They're taking a really different approach than I did. Since I knew it was going to be 3 books, I felt at liberty to dole out the amazing facts little by little, but they're taking the come out with all guns blazing approach.
Gotcha. That I'm looking forward to that. And you have a new book coming out in just a couple of weeks after this. The first Aurora Teagarden book, All the Little Liars, comes out the 1st of October. Are you excited to get back into that world?
I am. I'm really kind of stunned that I've gotten so many approaches from people saying, "Oh, we're so glad you're writing this again. Oh, we want another Aurora so bad." I thought, well, if all of you had bought them the first time, they would,
then you'd have plenty of them.
Plenty of them. But the great thing, another side benefit of writing the Sookie books, was that everything I had ever written was in print, and that's just been an incredible boon, because people read those books that would never have read them otherwise. I mean, that series was a dead series, but it came to life again.
That's wonderful. And that's the beauty of having a back catalog when something finds the huge audience. That's wonderful.
So true.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I have a question from a listener. Listener Trey Berry asks, do you have any plans for an Eric Northman book?
No, I'll never write about those characters again. Especially Eric, because most of the people who were so angry at me were Eric worshipers, and they just thought I did him harm. And I thought, yeah, I did everything but draw a blinking light around the end of the book to say, this is how I'm going to end it. This is how I'm going to end it. It's not going to end the way you want it to. But still, they were taken by surprise and very unhappily. I have written about a couple of the characters. In the Midnight books, John Quinn makes an appearance, and also Barry Bellboy, who was a minor character in the Sookie books. But I'll never write about the major characters again.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Charlaine Harris, thank you so much for spending so much time with me this afternoon. And I know you're about to hit the road on a big promotional tour and stuff, and so glad I got to connect with you before you headed out. Where can people connect with you and find all of your books and keep up with news of what's coming up?
Well, I always print my publication and appearance schedule not only on my own website, which is charlaineharris.com, and you can ask me questions on my website, or you can go to my page on Facebook. I have an author page on Facebook, and I will answer messages there too.
Wonderful. And I'll put links to those in the show notes. Charlaine, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, sure. Thank you, Hank. It's been so much fun.